Hello and welcome to Conversations With, our monthly series of informal and enlightening conversations between the leading edge teacher and author, Jim Self, and some of today's most progressive and connected teachers, channels, and authors. Now, here's our host, Jim Self.
Well, let's talk about that because this is really an important piece of information that I think people need to hear in regard to how around that default and around the perception of what ascension is. And, you know, we spend a lot of time in the work at Mastering Alchemy with many of the archangels, numbers of the ascended masters, but Yeshua being one of the predominant teachers, he basically has said numbers of times, what you are doing, I could not do when I was embodied. And he said, what you will do is you will wind up, as you begin to build this light body, and numbers of them have said this throughout different ways, is you will no longer need to leave that body. So as in, you don't have to die. Now, you hear that lightly rather than in some dramatic statement. They're basically saying, as you begin to step into these higher frequencies and you remove those patterns of fear and separation, powerless and the victim from that mental emotional body and pull it out of the DNA coding system, you basically will live as long as you want. But they've also said real clearly, and Yeshua did this to me in the middle of a lecture, while everybody's now listening to I don't have to die, he said, but you will. It was what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What he was really saying is, and this is to your point about why a lot of these ascended beings have left the body when they did, is the environment was really harsh for many of those beings, Yeshua included. He said, but what happens now is this environment, you all are creating this shift and this new environment in which needing to die is not necessary, and you can live in that body as long as you have it serviceable and useful for you. And when it has no value for you, you simply, one breath, lay it down, step out, create another form if that's what you wish. So that concept is something very different than what we've read in books about how, Kuthumi or Saint Germain or others did it. This is very much a different environment. We're operating in a different operating system, if you would, since 2012. One of the other things that has been said in this ascension, this process, is you won't have to die, but don't count on that transition into that 20-year-old body.
Right.
And the reason they've said that is because as you step into that ascension state in the physical body, which is the objective, and you begin to walk around in that physical body as an ascended being of light, fully conscious, it's too dramatic for the rest of the world to see you at 70 years old one day and 20 years old the next day. It doesn't work that way. It's too traumatic. And so you will step into that body. The skin will change. You'll be more radiant. People will look and say, gee, you really look great at 70 years old. But you will be 70 years old for another 200 if you choose. And I think that's a piece of this transition that people also will begin to find as they look seriously as what's available and how is it possible to do this versus the expectations that we walk around with on our sleeve.
Well, and on the way to enlightenment, it does put the expectations in our own face and makes one really consider it. And I think there's a very naive thinking about enlightenment, meaning that you're younger, richer, and more powerful. But those elements really go out the door. The further you get into the enlightenment, you realize that the younger is a very old human dynamic, and it really doesn't matter. There's no young or old on the other side, and ultimately on this earth there probably won't be. And it doesn't really matter because we equate youth to energy and good looks and things like that. You're going to have all the energy that you want, and the good looks aren't going to come from the surface, from the skin. They're going to come from a radiance from the inside. So the youth thing really becomes very, very irrelevant. the thing about wealth or richness or going beyond the just enough consciousness, getting just enough in your life, doesn't really matter, because you're going to be on a whole different track. You're not going to be living from paycheck to paycheck, or the ability to pay rent, 1 month after the other. It becomes irrelevant, because you're literally existing multidimensionally at that point, and whatever you need is just going to be there. And you can be without any money in the bank and still a very enlightened master, because the moment you need it, it's just there. You don't have to think about it or plan it. You don't have to hoard money or save a lot of money in the bank. It's just there. Now that's really living in trust, but that's the way enlightenment is. And
it is.
The other concept is that we always run into with people, and they're having a hard time understanding it. But Adama says power is truly an illusion. Power is the thinking that you have to get energy from outside of yourself, whether it's in the form of money or status or anything. And that goes out the door. There's no need for power, because, again, everything is there, and it's all from within. So there's no power game. So all of these expectations of enlightenment really go out the door.
They really do. I've used the example as an analogy all through the work we've done, that as you really step into that fifth dimensional body and then into that multidimensional aspect, you just simply think apple and hold out your hand and the apple appears. And it's a wonderful analogy, but it's an accurate analogy. And so it's one of those things where people go, oh, well, that's cute. But once you start stepping into this capacity, and if you can think about it from this standpoint, what if you could do that? What if you could just simply think apple and the apple would appear? You'd be mesmerized at your creation the first time, and you'd create another 10 or 50, and you'd show your friends. But at some point you realize, I'm doing this. And what if I wanted a banana or a house or a fill in the blank? And what happens is pretty soon you don't need things. Your life actually gets very simple, because as you've said now 2 or 3 times in this conversation, everything you need is right at your fingertips when you need it. So you're not walking around with the house on your back because I have to protect my house or my image or my power or whatever it may be. You simply have the capacity in the most kind and direct manner, just simply, it's not a poverty, it's a simpleness. And in that simpleness, you're going to see your ability to create things you cannot even imagine right now, as I'm watching people begin to understand this as they are stepping into this space in the Mastering Alchemy work. It's really a phenomenal observation of what people are capable of doing.
Well, I had an interesting example happen the other day of just this very thing we're talking about. I was down at our studio, and I was talking to somebody way at the far end of the studio, kind of about this concept. They're having some financial problems, and I was trying to help them to understand that once you come to the place of trust and grace within yourself, it's just there. But if you're in the emotion and the drama, the worry, and, oh, my God, what's going to happen next, that's exactly what you're going to get. And I pointed way across the room, and I said, there's a pitcher of water over there. And I said, typically you'd say, well, if you're enlightened, you can move that pitcher of water. And I said, but it doesn't really matter, but yet you can. And it just happens. You don't have to work at it. There's no effort. There's no focusing psychic energy. You just feel, not even think, but you feel that pitcher of water is moved, and it is. And we were both kind of looking over at it, and suddenly somebody that was setting out food and stuff, cleaning up the kitchen counters, went over, moved the pitcher of water, and brought it over to where it was supposed to be. And I cracked up laughing, and I said, you see, I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I knew it was going to happen. And the person I was talking to said, yeah, but that was, Mary Jo that, picked it up. And I said, it doesn't matter. You expect it to levitate across the room, but it didn't matter. It moved, and it was simply my passionate, loving desire, and it moved. So what if it was a human that moved it? It could have been an earthquake that moved it, but it moved.
If you enjoyed this highlight from Conversations With Join Jim Self live on the Awakening Zone Network. That's awakeningzone.com. If you're looking for free tools for your personal and spiritual growth, if you want to be who you came here to be, visit masteringalchemy.com, where you can learn more about Jim, his work, and future guests. Our theme song is Hands of Love by Barry Goldstein. May you experience laughter and grace on your journey home.